So let's start from the beginning. Monday, November 29th, 10:51 p.m. The race for Spider-Man No Way Home tickets has commenced. I was quite nervous at this time. It was really sucking for me, life in general. I was having issues with my car.
You want to give me a push while you're back there, pal?
My work and my health, but that all took a back seat. All for the ability to go watch Spider-Man No Way Home at 3 p.m. on the 16th, Thursday afternoon in IMAX, the earliest possible showing, or so I thought, because apparently my nephew's grandfather, his mother's dad, not mine, turns out he's like this recruiter for a school and got to see it a day earlier and took my nephew with him. And of course, I was extremely jealous. Your uncle loves you, Kason, but come on, man. Where's the invite, okay? Anyways, as I waited in that AMC and Fandango error loading screen, I thought to myself, well shit, I'm really gonna have to watch this bitch on Monday, aren't I? And all of a sudden, before all the doom and gloom set in, as I'm venting my immutable rage on Twitter, I see emergency awesome tweet that movietickets.com, a website I'd never heard of before, is working better than Atom Tickets or Fandango. So I made an executive cash money move, took a chance, and after a little bit of bullshit with the website's location settings, I was able to cop my No Way Home ticket at the time and place I wanted, and maybe not the exact seat in mind, but a damn good one. And that afternoon eventually came. I left 2 hours early from my house so that if my car died, I could still make it there on foot, and also because of the construction happening on the only main highway leading to that theater in my area, because of course that would be happening at this time. And I was blasting My Hero by Chad Kroeger, and I was zipping on over to watch some highfalutin art. And to my delight, the other people that were there were just as enthusiastic as me, which is always comforting, because if any mofo has tickets for this specific showing, you know they're just as deep into this shit as you are, and the energy was immaculate, and more importantly, there was no fucking babies, because of course, that is what it all boils down to. If you bring your children to an event like this, you are scum of the earth, eat shit, shit blood.
Suck a wiener, sit and spin.
So as I grabbed my extra large popcorn and my cherry icy, I take my seat, and apart from the fucking idiot right next to me, which was recording the beginning of the movie with the brightest setting on his phone turned on, very visibly, very shittily I might add. Like, guys, I'm not an aggressive person, and to be honest, I don't give a fuck that he was recording the movie. I'm trying to see those fucking badass parts on YouTube right after I leave this bitch. But you're gonna do it in such a sloppy and shit way, then I'm gonna speak up. And so I had to tell the gentleman, are you gonna record the whole fucking movie? And thankfully he stopped and he didn't chop my head off, or he wasn't waiting for me by my car after the movie, and I didn't have to fucking start throwing chingazos with this man, okay? So that was a dub. And so I sat and watched the best Spider-Man movie I'd ever seen, and that's because I was there for Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. I didn't see The Amazing Spider-Man. I saw The Amazing Spider-Man 2. You know, I've been in the trenches with these Spider-Man movies, guys, and in the span of 2 hours and 30 minutes, I left absolutely elated. So much so that I had to talk about it immediately as I got home with my boy Oscar. I had to convey with my boy Protocol 36. If you are here, you should know him by now, but if not, then go check him out. He's a literal king, one of the best humans ever created with A1 content, trust me. And so with this review, I will go into the story as I usually do, but I'll do my best to weave the likes and dislikes throughout. Then I'll explain the mid-credit scene. The movie is truly amazing, but no movie is perfect, so I will be addressing the few problems I did have with it, but also addressing some of the most prevalent problems I've seen others have that have compelled me enough to comment on those said problems. And lastly, of course, I will give you my 1 to 10 rating of this film. And one more thing, guys, no matter what I say or anyone says, don't let these words hold that much weight to you, okay? I see way too many people getting mad at other people's opinions, and you have to remember it's just that, opinions. I'm gonna say things you might disagree with, some things you might agree with, and you should have the fortitude within yourself to be steadfast in your own beliefs and opinions. Don't give these motherfuckers you hate power by getting mad, okay? If I can impart any knowledge, it would be that, even if I'm one of those mofos, okay? Hopefully not though. So without further ado,
Pizza time.
So we pick up right where we left off with Far From Home, with Spider-Man being framed for the death of Mysterio and Peter Parker's identity being revealed to the world. This of course causes a shitstorm of legal and social issues for Peter and his loved ones. Edith, the Iron Spider charge box are all confiscated by the cops, so that most certainly won't fall into the wrong hands later on in the MCU, right? And Peter, Ned, and May, as well as Michelle Jones Watson, yes, we see what you did there, John Wattu, brilliant man, you all get interrogated and pressed by the police. That is until a very good lawyer steps in, and yes guys, it's the one and only Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock. No Daredevil just yet, but I'm almost certain that this is a tease for a team up in the future. It's gotta happen, it's bound to, and I knew this was gonna happen already, guys. Like, one of the leaks was literally this scene in almost HD of all of them at the table, but even then, just to see it kept me grinning from ear to ear. And basically Matt gets Peter clear of all legal charges, but of course they still have to deal with the public, and this goes from people throwing bricks into their apartment, causing them to move in with Happy, obviously J. Jonah Jameson making it worse, Peter's teachers acting different, and most importantly colleges not wanting to only accept him but also not accepting MJ or Ned, literally ruining their futures. And so after repeated rejections due to their relationships with Spider-Man, Pete decides he needs to do something and seeks out Doctor Strange, who isn't the Sorcerer Supreme anymore because of a technicality. So Wong took up the mantle and he asked Doctor Strange to cast a spell to make everyone forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And well, Peter messes up the spell by trying to add too many people last minute to the list of those that he didn't want to forget who he was, and the spell goes wild and is quickly contained by Strange. And when Strange informs Peter that he'd actually just have been able to talk to MIT and try to convince them to admit him and his friends, which is just so relatable at that age. Like, I didn't know shit about college or how any of that shit worked, so Strange obviously is infuriated and kicks him out. Peter rushes to the infamous bridge scene to catch the recruiter before she leaves on a plane. That is when we're reintroduced to our one and only Doc Ock, played by the great Alfred Molina, and we get a fantastic battle between them that ultimately ends with Doc Ock's tentacles being no match for nanotech and Peter overriding them with the Iron Spider AI. And just before they get whisked away by Doctor Strange, we see the return of the Green Goblin in full mask and getup, and how good it was to see him back. And so it's explained the spell was contained, but that before it had been, people from other universes who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man were pulled into the MCU, so Peter has to find them, catch them, and send them back home before they break the universe essentially. And so Strange already captured the Lizard, and soon after Peter goes to capture Electro, who isn't blue anymore, and Sandman, who is conveniently at the same place at the same time. He gets them together, and soon after the Goblin takes a back seat and Norman comes out and is noticeably disturbed, and Pete gets a call that he's at May's work at Feast, and it's Norman basically struggling mentally with what's been happening, not having Oscorp or his son anymore and being in this new world. And so while Peter is set on sending them back as quickly as possible, May really insists that it's Peter's duty to help them. And when he brings Norman back to the Sanctum, the villains get to talking and discover that just before they were about to die, they were brought to this universe, and that if they were sent back, they'd basically just die fighting Spider-Man eventually. So they obviously don't want to be sent to die like lambs to the slaughter, and Peter begins to empathize with them, and Strange is having none of it. So Pete decides to do the responsible thing and fight Doctor Strange for the cube artifact that would then send them home, and we get an amazing sequence of Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange, with Strange separating Peter from his body. And in the trailers I was like, okay, that's it. How is this even going to continue? This is like Doctor Strange's realm. He has all control here, but due to the spider sense, which we actually saw a visual representation of in this movie, we got the spikes, baby, and it was glorious. Strange was unable to take the cube. It was really beautiful, something that even stumped the ex-Sorcerer Supreme. Like, it's crazy how obscure and vague the spider sense is. It just makes it and Spider-Man that much more special of a character in my opinion. But anyway, they have an amazing back and forth in the mirror dimension, with Spider-Man in very Spider-Man fashion turning on that big brain, improvising and using geometry to fucking S&M web tie Strange and swipe the box and sling ring from him, and dips back to the Sanctum. And from there, Peter takes the villains to Happy's condo, and they use the Fabricator, the machine that made the red and black suit in Far From Home, and repurpose it to make tech that will cure the villains of their powers. With the tech in the MCU being insanely more advanced from each of their respective universes, then it seems like cures are way more than possible. I mean, Tony Stark figured out time travel on a fucking whim, right? So this should be easy fucking breezy. And it is, with Peter's intellect and help from a man who's, you know, somewhat of a scientist himself. They make a new chip for Doc Ock, and he can finally see the light. The tentacles are not influencing him anymore, and he makes a complete 180. And they make a device to drain the charge out of Max Dillon, and even a goblin serum. But as progress seems like it's being made, of course things must go awry in the story of Spider-Man, and Peter Spider Sense kicks in hard, as John Watts displayed with a very nice long shot and I believe a depth of field change. And it's revealed Norman is gone and the Goblin is back, and we get an amazing villain speech about how they do not need cures and that they're gods and they take what they want, and these powers are gifts, not curses. He convinces Max to take off the power siphoning device, and that's when all hell breaks loose. Max gets a hold of an arc reactor, knocks Doc Ock off the building, and then dips with Flint. The lizard gets loose from the feast truck, and Peter and the Goblin have the most epic fight scene rivaling that of Spider-Man 1, although I give the pure brutality edge to Spider-Man 1 because of all the blood and dust and the crazy sounds Tobey was making. It was incredible nonetheless. Peter is using PS4 Spidey moves on Goblin, showing him the motherfucking combos, guys, and Norman is eating them and smiling back at him. What a fucking problem this man was throughout the film, and what an honor and privilege it was to see Willem Dafoe back as the Goblin, and just back at all. And Pete even ends up on the outside of the building and gets surprise attacked by the lizard, which I've been waiting for with Tom's iteration, is when someone would finally come at him while he's on the side of a building, some kind of horizontal action. So that was really great to see. And Norman proceeds to pontificate, saying golden lines like all the strength to have it all but too weak to take it, and then body slams Peter through like 9 stories until they hit the ground floor. And May, like the amazing woman she is, comes in to use the Goblin cure, but to no avail. And we all know the tumultuous relationship May and Norman have had in the past, and when she doesn't let up trying to defend Peter, he sets the glider on her and impact is made. And he even throws a pumpkin bomb at her as the cherry on top of his evil menace fucker sundae, and Peter is barely able to deflect it. And that is when something I truly did not expect to happen happened, and John Watts did this in a truly outstanding way by making us believe May was dead, then that she was going to be fine, and then ultimately letting us know that she wasn't going to be. Just after delivering those famous words, with great power there must also come great responsibility, and then they fucking shoot his ass to just top it off, and he has to flee and to rub it in even more. Like a scene out of Blade Runner, Peter stands in front of a giant screen in the rain as J. Jonah Jameson goes live and gives a legendary speech about basically the life of Spider-Man, that everywhere he goes chaos and calamity ensues, and the innocents, i.e. his loved ones, are left to pick up the pieces. Really digging the nails in and pouring salt and acid on those wounds, especially right after May died. Peter is in absolute shambles. We then transition to Ned and MJ, and they're at Ned's place with the box and still are not going to activate it, but are worried for Peter and need to see him. And so somehow Ned with the sling ring is able to conjure a portal and actually opens one, and we see in such an amazing way. And I knew he was going to be in the movie because of the leaks, but it didn't detract from the pure joy of this moment in the least. But I just remember seeing those big eyes and I knew it's happening. The anticipation as he's running towards the portal, you see the different body type, and voila, through the portal jumps the werewolf himself, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, transported to this world. And then a second attempt to find the real Peter Parker is made, and none other than the OG himself in full Banana Republic garb comes through, Tobey Maguire, and it was insane as well. Both reveals met with huge roars in the theater, although I must admit that it wasn't as good as Andrew's. Like, it was kind of just, hey, it's me, which might have been what they were going for to contrast them both. And one could argue that Tobey really didn't need to do much to elicit the same response, but yeah, they officially enter the MCU, and after a quick little web battle, they go and try to find Peter as well, and they go to comfort him, and this is when all 3 Spider-Man meet. History is made, guys, and they share their experiences. Uncle Ben gets name dropped for the very first time in the MCU. Well, it's their Uncle Ben's at least, and they all share a moment recognizing that with great power there must also come great responsibility. And Andrew and Tobey shared their personal losses of Ben and Gwen Stacy, and how Uncle Ben's killer died and it didn't make anything better, and giving out that sage advice and learning from previous Spider-Man, which is so damn meta and I love it. And now they go to the school science lab and start working on cures for each remaining villain, and even a reluctant Goblin cure, which Tobey has to reassert that they plan on helping Norman and not killing him because, well, Tom is seeing red obviously. And this whole lab sequence is absolutely brilliant. It gets all 3 Spider-Man to show their scientific inclinations, how smart they are, as well as sneak in some where are they now kind of history. We get to know Andrew is still shrugging along and hasn't been in a relationship since Gwen, and that since 2007 Spider-Man 3, Tobey and his MJ have been making things work, although things have been complicated. I really wish they dropped a Mayday Parker reference here, because that would have been dope. We got our first sign of the Spider-Man pointing meme. You gotta love and respect that, as well as a tease for Hobgoblin in there, and we see Tobey does in fact have his suit on, since I was wondering just where the hell it was. Then they bait all the villains to meet them at the new Statue of Liberty, and before they come, we get amazing dialogue and interactions between each Spider-Man. Yes, it's not Shakespeare, okay? But this is Spider-Man here, guys, okay? 3 generations to be exact, and anything Spider-Man will elicit a dopamine avalanche in the darkest of souls. And we get the Raimi back references again, which was absolute gold, and they really pressed Tobey on the organic web shooters, which was nice to have finally acknowledged. And the OG himself, Tobey, lets Andrew know that, hey, fuck what you heard, and fuck all these mofos on the internet and what they have to say. You're amazing. And I will say this right now, Andrew Garfield is one of the best living actors working today, top 5 in my opinion, and as a vocal critic of his movies, I was very happy about this, okay? I like Andrew Garfield, always have as an actor. As Peter Parker, not so much, but as Spider-Man, although sometimes delve too much into a Deadpool type of lane for me, I always thought was great. He has all the energy and enthusiasm, and I loved it. Those movies being the way they were never had anything to do with him. It was always Sony. And I also just want to address how people are saying because there is a movement to bring back the Amazing Spider-Man 3 or to make one to redeem Andrew, people are going on about, oh, where was this energy in 2012? Well, motherfucker, the movies are the reason why there wasn't that energy in 2012. Now that Sony has learned from their mistakes, or seemingly can learn from their mistakes, that is why the energy is present now. Let's not do more of that, okay? Anyways, so as far as I'm concerned, I want to see him get redemption, but that's for a future video I'm planning, guys. Overall, this whole pre-fight sequence was amazing, and then the villains come and they have the cure stored all over the scaffolding. Ned and MJ open a portal so that they can bring the box away from their location in a safe place, but can't seem to close it now. They begin to fight, and it's a bit of a mess. They are discombobulated. They're tripping over each other, although I gotta say, it was awesome seeing Tobey and the Lizard fight, seeing as eventually he would have gone to that in the Raimiverse had it continued. That makes my childhood radiate a big smile, okay? And so they get their asses whooped a bit, but then converge, and Tobey actually acknowledges Avengers, which is awesome, and they make a joke of it, and they themselves work together as a team, which Spider-Man isn't the best at in the comics, mostly being a loner, but this is on another level awesome, because Tom is working in a team of 2 other people, but they're technically all Spider-Man. So in a way, even though it's 3 separate people, it's kind of still Peter Parker versus all these villains. Like, it's just too damn good, guys. And I love how Tom asserts the positions, like, I'm Peter 1, Tobey, you're Peter 2, and Andrew, you're Peter 3, because that's the correct order, okay? Not to put anybody down, I hate spreading negativity, and I don't think it's negativity, but this is just the truth, okay? And when Andrew says I love you guys, it was awesome, because that's self-love right there. That's the audience. We love you guys. We love Spider-Man. The roar in the audience, and this might be top 3 moments in the movie for me, and top 3, maybe even top 2 moments in all of the MCU. But when you see them running down the scaffolding, all intense, all 3 Spider-Men, and then jumping off to a swing, lightning in the air, that dusk vibe, I was clapping, I was screaming, I was making out with people, I was shitting blood, I was losing my mind, guys, okay? Like, all I could think was how everything that has come before led up to this point, and how awesome all of this was. God damn, guys, I love Spider-Man. They all start taking them out one at a time. Tobey cures Flint, and Tom cures Dr. Connors, and Otto comes back in clutch, curing Electro. It's all old footage between Sandman and the Lizard, probably due to the pandemic, I'd imagine, but it worked in my opinion, and it gives such closure for our heroes, especially Electro and Andrew. Such a sweet moment between them, and with them teasing Miles Morales in the future, I got some ideas for that as well. Tobey and Otto meet again, and this time under better circumstances, and it was so goddamn heartwarming. Doctor Strange comes back and is about to send everyone home until that motherfucking menace Goblin comes through and swipes the box and is restrained by Ock, and then when Strange eventually swipes it back, God proves to be unequivocally the biggest fucker of all time, leaving a pumpkin bomb in the box and it exploding and releasing the spell. No chance to contain it anymore, guys. That was Defoe becoming the greatest villain ever, okay? And the structure starts falling because of it, and MJ falls, as we've all seen in the trailers. And another moment of great fuckery in all of space-time, where Tom is about to catch her and the Goblin doesn't let him have it, again attacking that heart. This is where Andrew gets his redemption, and I absolutely loved it, especially when he dives and slaps that steel beam out of the way. Love that little touch, and the emotion in that quick little scene with MJ was some of the best in the whole MCU. Hawk and Toby get their other villains to safety, and Ned is actually saved by the cloak of levitation. Very dope moment, and Tom is in rage mode and tears up the glider until he finds a bomb and explodes it in midair. He means business. He's seeing red, and they land on the new Statue of Liberty's shield. And guys, if you were to tell me Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin was going to fight Spider-Man on top of a big Captain America shield in about 20 years after I was 4 watching Spider-Man 1, I'd think you were crazy. And now it happened, and I still can't believe it, okay? And that final fight with Goblin was amazing, and Tom gave him the fucking combos. He gave him the business, and Gobby had some shit back for him. And more so than anything, the Goblin's psychological warfare was incomparable, okay? Rubbing it in even more. Even though he struck the final blow, it was Tom who killed her. With such a devilish grin and a sinister cadence, Willem Dafoe not only deserves that toppy, but a fucking award for that performance, okay? Greatest villain in the MCU hands down. I know for comic movies there was a turn where they started to give these villains backstories and good reasons for why they did what they did to make us sympathize with them, but sometimes, and as proof positive with the Joker, you just want a motherfucker to be evil for the sake of being evil sometimes. It's just fun and shit like that. And Dafoe is just incapable of not giving his all, so if he doesn't get an Oscar for his performance or an award, then you best believe he better get an Oscar-worthy performance award on his cock. A real Green Goblin.
If you know what I'm talking about.
I digress from my deviancy, guys, sorry, but Tom is about to kill Goblin, and understandably so. You can feel all of Tom's rage and emotions until Toby stops him from impaling Norman once again with his own glider, and all it takes was a look, and Tom puts it down. But what? With another shocking scene has Toby stabbed by the Goblin so unexpectedly. I legit thought he was gonna die, and I was super worried. Andrew tosses a serum, and they finally cure Norman. All the villains have been cured and redeemed, and Toby is fine, thank God, and they all share one last big Spidey hug for the sake of self-love, which was goddamn ethereal. And at the end of all this, Peter has to make a choice, and that is to stop the waves of people from the multiverse coming in and restoring reality. He has to make everyone forget who Peter Parker was. Not just forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but make the world forget Peter Parker. And that is some shit. And he goes through with it. And I love how Strange says, everyone who ever loved you will forget you. We'll all forget. Strange loves Spider-Man. That is confirmed. We see Tom say goodbye to Ned and MJ, and it's absolutely beautiful, okay? We got a build up to this moment since Homecoming, which made this moment that much more meaningful. And of course, Tom and Zendaya being a real life couple made the chemistry and the scene hit that much harder. We got to sit with those relationships for 3 movies and experience them in a longer way than we would have in any other iteration. That made it all so much more impactful when they said their goodbyes, and in their final moments with each other, MJ pleaded to Peter to find her and make her remember after the spell was cast. And in this new world where everyone had forgotten Peter Parker's existence, Peter walks into that donut shop. MJ is in, and Ned soon follows, both oblivious to who this guy is, intent on jogging their memory until he sees how much better off they are without him. He sees MJ push her hair out of her face, revealing a bandage from the previous events, and at that moment he knew he couldn't do it, and he does the responsible thing to do, the most Spider-Man thing to do, and leaves, not bringing his loved ones into his tangled web of a life. And we see him visit May's grave, and Happy visits as well, and they have a nice little combo. Happy doesn't even remember him, and it's sad. It's so damn deep. And we see Peter moving into a shitty apartment finally, which I totally thought we were gonna get a cameo from the God King Ditkovich. And we see a GED test, so Peter is definitely getting that diploma and going to college, and it's time to go again, saving the day with a brand new suit we can see him crawling out of the window with. And you guys should know that this is what I've been wanting more than anything. The red and black was dope, but red and blue will always be where it's at, and I saw it had reflective material, which is straight from Andrew's suit, the previous best suit until now. And just before we get our final swing, we see a coffee cup that says, "We are happy to serve you," and thank you, John Watts, you served us and a lot of people so well, especially with that final suit and swing in the snow. Absolute perfection. We'll see if it has raised webbing similar or even less raised than Andrew's, because Andrew's was perfect, but it actually looked really good in motion. And the score by Michael Giacchino throughout the whole film, but especially in this moment, was absolutely legendary. legendary, so grandiose and triumphant and just absolutely perfect. The new Spidey symbol and the no black lines was awesome. I've always been a fan of the previous suits, but this is so classic, so traditional. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It takes the things that work, that were good from each Spider-Man before him, and even in that way, it's so damn meta because that's exactly what the people who are making these movies are doing, taking inspiration and learning from the Spider-Man before. And that's how it ends, folks. So we get our mid-credits scene, and it's of course Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock in some Mexican bar, and he gets absolved away, taken to his universe, but a piece of the Venom symbiote breaks off, and now the MCU can do their own version of Venom, which arguably they could have done it already if they had the rights because of how vast the MCU cosmic is and already established. But most importantly, this doesn't have to exist with this, and he gets to fight an alien. That is awesome. I'm happy about that, but more on that in a separate video. So as far as problems I had with the movie, the ones I mentioned for the most part will be nitpicks and very few. I wish we would have gotten all three Spider-Man in full practical suits, more so masked up and seen the mask a little bit more. Like I felt like Tobey never really had his mask on for too long. We maybe got it for a second practically. I don't know if he just didn't want to be wearing it, but I would have liked to see more of that. Maybe more of Tobey fighting Electro. The beginning of the movie I felt was a little too fast paced, like we transitioned from Peter and his loved ones being in deep shit to him being in the clear legally. I mean, he did have a really good lawyer, so I'll let that slide. I also wish we would have seen more interactions with the other Peters and Doctor Strange. We had one, but I don't know. It makes everything that is so unbelievable that is happening feel that much more real if they actually interact with the MCU. So that's just my little nitpicks, guys. They don't detract from my enjoyment of the movie at all. I just wanted to get them out there to be fair. Now, for some of the problems I heard other people have, which I don't agree with, and I'd like to address quickly. First off, I knew this was going to rile some feathers as soon as I saw it, but them basically making Aunt May MCU Peter's Uncle Ben. Personally, I believe MCU Peter had an Uncle Ben. I think that's why we had the off-brand great power speech in Civil War, this little comment in Homecoming, the suitcase in Far From Home, and Peter saying I know after May said that line. My best guess though is that before the New Deal had been struck, there were intense legalities at play, leaving Marvel Studios unable to mention certain parts of Spider-Man lore. I believe that's why we haven't yet still had a legitimate MCU Uncle Ben acknowledgement. Like we didn't even see a gravestone next to May's at the end of the movie. Some people have even speculated that MCU Uncle Ben might still be alive somewhere. Now, I really believe during Spider-Man freshman year, we will get a solid confirmation of either Uncle Ben's existence or his absence, which honestly, in my opinion, doesn't matter at this point. Not to say Uncle Ben is unimportant, but at this point, if the intention was to keep Aunt May his moral compass, then I think it's better that way. Uncle Ben is very important to Spider-Man's mythos, the catalyst for the superhero, but if I'm being real, I think May is 10 times what Uncle Ben ever was. She has been Peter's rock from the jump and a main character throughout the story of Spider-Man, so I had no issue with this, and honestly, I think it was a great way to refresh kind of a piece of the origin. And if they tried to cram in Uncle Ben, it might have very well fell flat on its face and kind of regressed the character. Plus, we got Uncle Ben via the other Spider-Man, so I think that worked well because of the establishment of those Bens in their other universes. And that led me to the next thing I've been hearing people say, which is finally he's Spider-Man. Why did it take so long for him to become Spider-Man? Which to that, I completely disagree. He's been Spider-Man since before Homecoming. We saw him going out of his way to help people in Civil War. We heard him say the off-brand with great power comes great responsibility. This man has been Spider-Man. Now, I believe the reason it feels this way is because since so much time has elapsed between franchises and the fact that Homecoming and Far From Home take the character in directions and environments we never thought Spider-Man would go in live action, now that we're back to that more traditional Spider-Man setting and environment, we're all ecstatic, okay? For most of the comics, he's swinging across the New York skyline. He's been Spider-Man, just in a different environment than we're used to and given the ability to progress. And I think it was imperative to avoid becoming stale that MCU Spider-Man did this. We'd had 3 different iterations of the character in the span of just a decade. No matter how much I love seeing Spider-Man tear up the New York skyline, I think if we didn't spend time away from that in Homecoming and in Far From Home, it might might have very well lost its luster, and it wouldn't have felt as spectacular as it did in that final swing and with that final suit. And for Peter to now have reasons to be a loner, to be hard to work with, to be unagreeable, to be distant because of the events of the last 3 movies and everything he's been through in the team-up movies, and because of having had the things he loved and having to give them up, instead of that just being his natural disposition, makes everything make more sense and makes everything more meaningful. That way, when he gets to college, he'll have a reason to be standoffish to Gwen and Harry. He learned as he went on so that everything meant more as time went on, which was truly spectacular. So Spider-Man No Way Home is the most Peter Parker story ever disguised as a multiverse movie. It not only displays the Parker luck and the struggle of Spider-Man the best I've ever seen since Spider-Man 2, it goes beyond that. Peter's struggling and in danger, but also so are the people he loves. Their futures and their well-beings are both at risk because of him being Spider-Man now. Before, it had only really been their well-beings. You know, MJ gets caught at the end of every movie, or Gwen Stacy, you know, she dies. But now being Spider-Man is hurting everyone on different levels, and to top it off, they took away Peter's rock, Aunt May. That's the first it's ever happened in live action, and this actually helps make this scene from Far From Home make sense now. They throw salt on the wounds and kick this man while he's down, and he still continues to persevere, to do the right thing. It balances so many things so well that on paper absolutely shouldn't work, but because of the perfect amount of nostalgia, fan service, chemistry, and direction, it thrives. It gave the Spider-Men I grew up with, along with their villains, opportunities that they wouldn't have had before. It gave the previous Spider-Man chances to be something they'd never been able to be before. Highlights. They got to be the absolute best parts of the character from the entire time they were on screen. They weren't without their emotional moments, don't get me wrong on that, but they didn't have to carry the emotional weight of this film the way Tom had to. They didn't have the responsibility to do so because it's his movie at the end of it, and all that might have just sparked new adventures for them yet. That is why this is the best Spider-Man movie. It's not only a celebration of Spider-Man, but everything that makes him spectacular. Shows you how impactful this character is and the generations of this character, that it can do the numbers that it's doing in theaters right now during a pandemic. Okay, that's the power of Spider-Man. This character, he means that much because he might not be that beacon of light like Superman is, or that Dark Knight like the Batman is, but he is that guy that's next to us. He's that guy that's struggling. He doesn't have his shit together. He's getting beat up. He has all the same problems that we do. He is rolling with the punches just like us, and he perseveres and he keeps on going. A perfect allegory for growing up and for dealing with life, and that is why I personally love Spider-Man, and that is why I am going to be giving Spider-Man No Way Home a solid 9.6 out of 10. And it's not only the best Spider-Man movie, but the best MCU movie now, and if I'm being honest, on the favorite list, it's just surpassed Guardians 1 for me, and that's a big deal for me, guys. You should know. Anyways, guys, that's the video. I'm hoping you enjoyed and that you'll be kind enough to leave me your Spider-Man ranking and your ratings for No Way Home, whether you liked it or not, whether you wish this happened or that. Also, next week, I'm planning a college trilogy video I've been thinking up for a while. Might have a collab or 2 coming as well. Other stuff is on the way, so stay tuned, players. We got stuff coming. That's it. If you liked the video, leave me a thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want to subscribe, I always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate the fuck out of all you guys. Happy holidays. You're the best. Wait. I love you guys.